Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. It is your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing details. Today, we discuss the spectacular Jaeger-LeCoultre Duomètre Quantième Lunaire. This is a 42mm rose gold watch that features two separate drivetrains in one case. It is dedicated to chronometry and it is beautiful. In 42mm with rose gold and a domed rather than conical bezel, the variant you see here debuted at SIHH 2012. So, 42mm in diameter in rose gold, 14mm thick, 50.5mm from lug tip to lug tip with a 21mm spacing between the lugs. Now, we put the watch on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, and it actually is an old friend, quite familiar to me, as I owned the 42mm white gold chronograph version of this watch for 4 years, and I loved that piece. Now, you can see it's relatively thin, though not particularly slender. It has the domed bezel that ultimately makes this viable with a tighter cuff, but you can see it does push out to the edge of my wrist, so I think you're going to want to have a 15 to 16 centimeter circumference wrist to wear this watch well. There is a smaller 40.5mm case available on the Quantième Lunaire, though not the chronograph, so if you want something slightly smaller, shoot for that one. If you want the wrist presence, shoot for this one. Now, the strap is high grade, medium rectangular scale alligator leather. It has some bolstering or stuffing for volume. It's a semi-gloss finish. You can see it features a sheer cut side, a monotone stitch, and this is a brand new JLC factory strap with calfskin on the bottom. We have a deployant clasp, and it is in rose gold deployant. And I emphasize this because not all Duomètre models still include a deployant clasp. They have found ways to peel money out of their investment and make the watches more profitable, and removing deployant clasps is one way they have decontented the watch. So I like to see Duomètres that have the traditional deployant clasp, and you can see that this particular generation of JLC deployant has a push-button quick release, so you can separate the strap from the buckle without tools. Closing all that up. You can see it has the JL logo externally, and it's all of high polish. You can also see that the shell, or the chassis of the buckle, is actually curved to match the curve of the underside of your wrist. The case is extraordinary for its detail, its beauty, and it's likely expensive production. As you can see, these lugs are finished differently from the case band, set into polish. What you can't quite see is that the lugs are welded on. That's an old school and laborious way of making a case, where you create the case, you create the lugs, you insert the lugs into a slot in the case band, weld them together, then you remove all of the gathered material to create a sharp break between lug and case. Now, normally that sharp break is still flush. Here you can see there's a little bit of a step between the lug and the case, making it even more extraordinary. The crown features polishing and media blasting outboard, and then a wonderfully tactile double knurling. Use this crown to wind both movements. See how we have one power reserve and another power reserve? They're both 50 hours there. Well, on the reverse side, you can actually see there's two mainspring barrels, and you wind one in one direction, then you back up and you wind the other. One ratchets while the other winds, and then the process is reversed. And they use pocket watch style ratchet clicks to pay homage to the movement that inspired this dual wing caliber. There was an 1880s minute repeating chronometer in the JLC Heritage Gallery, which is their museum, and it had a Victorin Piguet Bausch that JLC had complicated and finished. And so the idea was to have two drivetrains. Here, one drivetrain powers the escapement and nothing but. To maintain absolute chronometry, there is no variation in torque and no loss in amplitude, for example, as the date prepares to jump or the moon phase prepares to jump. We have the second barrel that acts to drive the time as well as the complication. So you get constant amplitude and constant force to the balance for optimal precision, and then a separate power reserve that prevents loss of time or loss of power reserve when operating the time and complications, and 50 hours is the time. The watch has a 1/6 of a second foudroyant, and it has a center seconds hand. So here's what you're looking at. Over here we have a radial date and a moon phase. At center we have the foudroyant, we have the center seconds, we have the hours and the minutes on a separate dial, all applique rose gold numerals. Now when I pull the crown out, you'll note the first thing that happens is the foudroyant stops at the index at 0. Now the second step is I pull it all the way out, and now a recentering hammer falls on a heart cam internally. So I've stopped the seconds, I've 0 reset both seconds and sixths of seconds. But look at this, the balance keeps beating. I've hacked the watch, but I haven't stopped the movement. This is so I don't lose time restarting the watch, because when you start a balance and then you restart it, well, it has to get back up to its full amplitude, and that takes time, which costs you time. As a result here, we disengage the escapement rather than stopping it. And by decoupling the hacked seconds hand and the balance, we further pursue the chronometric intent of this movement. 2 power reserves. Jump back into action there. We have a quickset mechanism for the pointer style date. We have a lovely granular dial that becomes something of a JLC signature during the 2010s. You can see that the movement is finished on the dial side, but it's even better finished on the reverse side. Also, I should mention, there is a push adjuster for adjusting the moon phase. That sits between the lugs at approximately 11 o'clock. On the reverse side, you'll note that the movement is made of German silver. This isn't so much an homage to Lange as it is an acknowledgement that the vintage watch in the museum that inspired this movement was made the old-fashioned way with a nickel copper zinc alloy. It's called Maillot in the Jura Mountains, where JLC is based. They are in the Vallée du Jeu, in between the mountains. So we have this Maillot bridge and plate setup that's golden hued because of the copper in the alloy. Everything that's silver is steel. And then you'll note we have both black polished and fired blued screws here. You'll also note there's a Côte de Soleil that radiates out from an imaginary center point atop the durable free-sprung balance. And then the anglage is quite estimable, better than most of what you'll get on a JLC under $100,000. You could see some wheels as well as the recentering hammer of the system, all satinated and beautifully so, and there's engine turning on the base plate, and the balance beats away at 21,600 vibrations per hour. As a fully assembled watch, this has been through the Master 1000 Hours control, a test of chronometry, shock resistance, water resistance, overall durability, power reserve that lasts 1,000 hours, and it's a test of the fully cased up watch, and I have it on good account that the timing tolerances for the Duomètre, something like -1 + 4 seconds per 24 hours, which is far better than COSC. And surprisingly, all of this is water resistant to 50 meters, not the dress watch standard of 30. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.